So, it was a Saturday night in Malaysia. The date was March 8, 2014. Kuala Lumpur International Airport was busy as it always is. People were rushing to their gates, families were saying their goodbyes, ground crews moved with purpose, loading baggage, fueling the plane, passengers boarding, finding seats, stowing carry-ons. This was the night Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 was scheduled to fly from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. It pushed back just after midnight, engines roared to life. At 12:41 a.m., Flight MH370 lifted off. It climbed into the night, navigation lights blinking. Below, Kuala Lumpur glittered. The journey had begun, a 6-hour flight, some passengers trying to sleep, others watching movies or reading, flight attendants doing safety demonstrations. It was all so normal. No one could have imagined this night would become a haunting mystery. A night that would leave the world with more questions than answers. Nobody could have imagined what was about to unfold. An airplane is more than just a machine. There were 239 people, 227 passengers and 12 crew members. They were from 15 different countries, a snapshot of the world. There were tourists, business people, artists, engineers, students, each with a story. These were not just numbers on a manifest, they were real people. There was a group of 20 employees from Freescale Semiconductor. Their disappearance would spark theories. The crew was led by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. He was 53, a veteran with more than 18,000 hours. His co-pilot, 27-year-old Farik Abdul Hamid, was transitioning to the 777. There was a Malaysian couple on their long-delayed honeymoon. A young man from India was starting a new job in Beijing. Each person had a life, a family waiting for them at their destination. As the plane flew into the darkness, it carried with it the lives and futures of 239 individuals. The flight began like any other. The plane climbed to 35,000 feet. The seatbelt sign was turned off. Passengers could move around the cabin. At 1:01 a.m., Captain Zahari's voice was heard for the first time.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Just 2 minutes after that last message, the plane's transponder suddenly went silent. It blinked out of existence. Air traffic controllers were confused. They tried to contact the plane. There was only silence. A final, haunting goodbye to the world. What happened next is the core of the mystery. The plane was approaching the handover point to Vietnamese air traffic control when it signed off. Those 5 words, the last verbal communication from the plane, left a silence that would echo for years. While the plane vanished from civilian radar, it was not entirely invisible. Military radar, which works differently, had picked up something. It showed an unidentified aircraft making a sharp turn. It turned back to the southwest. It flew back across the Malay Peninsula and over Malaysia into the Strait of Malacca. It was flying erratically, changing altitude, as if someone was trying to avoid detection. The military didn't immediately identify the blip as MH370. It was an unknown on their screens. Even after the transponder was off, the plane continued to communicate in a different way. Automatic pings to a satellite. These pings went to a satellite owned by Inmarsat. They contained no position data, but they became crucial clues. By analyzing the ping times, experts produced 2 vast arcs of possible locations. One north, one south. The plane had to be somewhere along one of those arcs, a needle in 2 enormous haystacks. It was clear someone had flown the plane after it left civilian radar, but who and why remained unanswered. The initial search was chaotic. It started in the South China Sea where the plane was last seen on civilian radar. Dozens of ships and aircraft from multiple countries rushed in. Hopes were high, objects were spotted, a slick, a fragment. Each sighting sparked hope but led to disappointment. Search teams found nothing but open water. Then the search moved. The satellite arcs shifted the focus to 2 new massive corridors. Northern overland, unlikely without witnesses. Southern into the remote Indian Ocean, more probable. The southern Indian Ocean is brutal, remote, water miles deep, the roaring 40s whipping up monstrous waves. Ships with multi-beam sonar and ROVs swept the sea floor in painstaking grids. For months, then years, the search continued. False leads and empty seabed footage became routine. They scanned a seafloor the size of a country, and still found nothing. The vast empty ocean kept its secrets. In the absence of answers, theories began to fill the void, from plausible to outlandish. Official investigators focused on a few possibilities: mechanical failure, pilot action, hijacking. One theory, catastrophic technical failure, an electrical fire incapacitating the crew and silencing communications. The plane could have flown on autopilot until it ran out of fuel. Another leading theory: deliberate act by a pilot. Lock the other out, depressurize the cabin, fly to a remote ocean. Focus fell on Captain Zahari when police found a plotted course into the southern Indian Ocean on his home simulator. Dramatic alternatives, hijacking, stolen passports, fears of terrorism, were investigated and largely discounted. The internet birthed wilder ideas: cyber attack, shot down, even extraterrestrial scenarios. Without a main wreckage site or black boxes, every theory remained speculation. The official record points to possibilities, but the why of MH370 is still unresolved. For now, we must live with questions and the hard work of investigation. While the world followed the mystery, the families of the 239 people lived a nightmare. They gathered in hotels in Kuala Lumpur and Beijing, waiting for any news. Candlelight vigils, protests, petitions. They demanded answers from governments and the airline. Anger and grief often mixed. Families accused officials of hiding information. Weeks turned into months and years. They lived in a state of suspended grief. Support groups formed, Voice 370 pushing for renewed searches and answers. In July 2015, a flaperon washed up on Reunion Island, confirmed to be from MH370. It was the first physical proof. More fragments later washed ashore on African coasts, tiny pieces of a giant plane. For some it was closure, for others it was further torment, proof of a crash, but not of the cause. The families continue to live in the shadow of that night, united by loss, searching for answers. The disappearance of MH370 was a global event. It dominated headlines for months. Cable channels ran 24/7 coverage. Experts and amateur sleuths debated theories on live TV. More than 24 countries contributed ships, aircraft, and technical expertise to the search. It was a rare moment of international cooperation, even if the search ultimately failed to find the main wreckage. The media kept the story alive but also drove speculation and misinformation. The families found their private grief turned into a public spectacle. MH370 forced aviation to confront uncomfortable truths. Calls for better tracking and live streaming of black box data followed. The tragedy became a catalyst for change, an industry lesson written loss. Today is August 28, 2025. More than a decade has passed. The official underwater search was suspended in January 2017. A private search in 2018 also found nothing. The main wreckage site and the black boxes remain lost in the dark of the Indian Ocean. Small pieces of debris offered evidence of a crash, but not the full story. The families continue to hold vigils, to petition for renewed searches, to live in suspended grief. They are haunted by silence, from the plane, from authorities, from the ocean itself. The truth may be lying 4 miles deep in the cold and dark of the abyss. Until it is found, the story of the 239 people on board will remain unfinished. What happened to Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370? We may never know. The silence remains.